Dustin Poirier is the best boxer in the UFC. The title of the best boxer in the UFC has been a title disputed for a long time amongst fans, and typically the contenders include current featherweight champion Ilia Topuria, self-proclaimed best boxer in the UFC, Max Holloway, sometimes former bantamweight champion Petr Yan, and of course my personal pick and legendary veteran Dustin Poirier. But in this video, I'm here to claim there's not really a competition. Dustin Poirier is the best boxer in the UFC, and there's really no debate. Whenever this question is asked to fans, the popular answer seems to be Max Holloway, and he is a really good pick. We just saw Max Holloway outbox and eventually brutally knock out Justin Gaethje with violent boxing in the last seconds of their fight. He's put up historic numbers with his volume in terms of punches and pitched basically shutout performances in the case of Calvin Kattar and Brian Ortega, and again has self-proclaimed himself as the Another good pick is Ilia Topuria, a relatively new contender to the title of the best boxer in the UFC, and has proved with his dominating performance against Josh Emmett and his championship performance against Volk that he could legitimately box with the very best. But despite what these guys have accomplished, I think Dustin Poirier beats all of these guys by a definite margin, both on a technical level and by what he has accomplished. With this probably being his last title shot and possibly being his last fight ever, Dustin Poirier could potentially add to those list of accomplishments when he fights Islam Makhachev this Saturday. And with me being a big Dustin Poirier fan, you know I'm going to put money on this fight, and you can too this Saturday. Guys, are you ready to elevate the fight night experience? Because with DraftKings, you can take the excitement to the next level by getting some skin in the game. Right now, all new customers get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 with a $5 deposit. Get a bonus bet back in the amount of your original bet if your first bet doesn't hit. New customers who deposit a minimum of $5 get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500. If that bet doesn't hit, no sweat, you'll get the original amount back in a bonus bet. Stay in on the action and check out DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight. If sports betting is not available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code TJLovesFights and deposit just $5 and get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500. That's promo code TJLovesFights only at DraftKings Sportsbook. So firstly, what makes Dustin Poirier's boxing so good? Despite Dustin Poirier having a really long reach for his height at 72 inches while only being 5'9", Dustin Poirier loves to make it up close and personal and really lives in the pocket. At this range, Dustin has an unreal ability to string together combinations with a beautiful mix of power and volume. Unlike a Max Holloway, for example, who tends to melt his opponents with sheer speed, Dustin may not throw as much as Max can in a certain interval, but throws with much more power and from different angles. It's funny because you can tell when Dustin plants his feet and is ready to throw combinations because he gets really wide, his back gets really square, and throws power shots from his hips in the forms of uppercuts and hooks. Some of the best examples of this includes his finish of Eddie Alvarez when he pushed Eddie to the fence, squared his body, and got to work with hooks on hooks on hooks. Dustin would showcase his finishing ability again against Conor McGregor in their second fight when he initially rocked Conor with a left hand, squared his SpongeBob body, and overwhelmed Conor with hooks and uppercuts from all different angles. And similarly, Dustin also did this against Justin Gaethje in their first fight when he again rocked Justin with a giant left hand, marched down Justin to the cage, and crushed him with hooks and uppercuts. Dustin's finishing instincts and ability to throw and overwhelm opponents with power and volume from different angles is just beautiful to watch, and the degree of difficulty to do this is absolutely insane. Those who train know that throwing power shots like hooks and uppercuts at volume is extremely draining, so for Dustin to do this late into fights while still keeping his precision is beyond impressive. But Dustin can equally be as effective when his back is on the fence. Dustin, even when he has a giant guy in Dan Hooker putting him against the fence, can still tee off with giant hooks, like shown here in the middle of the second round, where Hooker's face was just taking all types of punishment. But Dustin works best off the fence when he's patient and looks for opportunities from an aggressive fighter. Of course, the best example of this was in his fight with Michael Chandler. Though Chandler had Dustin hurt at times and in this sequence had Dustin to the cage, Dustin stayed calm in this exchange, catching Chandler's right arm with his high block by turning right with his left arm up, which served to both protect himself and also load up a giant right hand that sent Michael Chandler down. He also beautifully had a similar sequence against Conor in his second fight when, even after getting rocked hard by Conor Conor throughout the first. Dustin stayed poised here towards the end of the first, slid past Conor's right hand with his left up, and came back with a big right hand that got Conor's attention for sure. And similarly, Dustin kept his calm in a bad position in his fight with Benoit Saint-Denis as he repeatedly rocked BSD off the cage. First instance being at the beginning of the second round when Dustin laterally moved with his back to the cage and popped off a left uppercut that buckled Benoit. And another instance of this being in the middle of the second round as Dustin again let BSD get comfortable walking forward and timed a big left hand, sending the Frenchman down another time. And I think you can really tell who's technically proficient by how comfortable they are in traditionally bad positions. On the grappling side of things, you can tell that Charles Oliveira is elite and extremely skilled in his craft because not only can he survive on his back, but he can often thrive there and sometimes willingly brings his opponents to this position because he's so damn good in his guard. I see the same thing with Dustin. Sometimes he lets his opponents think they have the advantage by letting himself get backed up, and in that time, he just stays calm, gets comfortable in this position, and looks for those windows of opportunity to land bombs. Now let's get a little more technical and look at the specific weapons he utilizes to stun or knock out opponents. Back to the Benoit fight, the third and last time Benoit Saint-Denis got dropped was when Dustin utilized his best weapon, a right hook that comes under and over an extended left hand. Benoit here desperately tries to throw a power left hand while Dustin slips his head to the inside and throws a right hook from under that arm and over the top to KO BSD clean. This hook after an extended left arm is so damn effective because Dustin in the southpaw stance can hide it under his opponent's punch and come over the top with great power, which often catches guys completely off guard. And unlike a more traditional boxing hook that is much more tight and within someone's peripheral, I feel like with Dustin's long ass arms, he can loop his hooks outside somebody's peripheral and just come with a different angle. Dustin did this again in his second fight with Max Holloway, first being in the middle of the first round where he waited for Max to throw out a left arm and again started from under that left arm and finished way over with a giant right hand on the temple. Then again, Dustin caught Max with another big looping right hand over Max's jab and caught him clean on the chin, wobbling him. And sticking to this fight, which I think is the best display of Dustin's boxing, we gotta talk about his defense, specifically his very unique but weird guard. The first time you see this guard, you think it's really stupid. It looks like a guy trying to attempt a shoulder roll, but instead of being bladed and thin as possible, he stands super square and wide. But it was so dang effective in this fight, even Max had to tell his corner. So before we throw this guard away, let's see why it's so dang effective. Of course, Dustin's left hand is up to block and deflect punches coming from Max's right hand, but things get interesting when Dustin uses his lead right arm to kind of wing up his elbow to block Max's left hand. And the subtle genius here is when you see an opening like Dustin's right side, naturally you want to throw on that side, which leads to opening up with your left arm, and like we saw before, this sets up Dustin's best weapon, which is his right over the top. And if we go back, this is actually how Dustin landed big on Max. That jab Max extended tried to land on that open right side, and he took the bait, allowing Dustin to land big. In a more traditional shoulder roll, you stand much more bladed because you're essentially trying to make a smaller hitbox, but this comes at a cost of being able to counter with more power. Because you stand so thin in this position, the best counter you can really do is a quick right hand. However, because Max stands so wide, when that right hand from his opponents comes and he turns with it with his left arm up, he can launch a big right hook right back. Additionally, without even trying to counter, Dustin is extremely slick in this position, beautifully avoiding Conor's punches with slick movement. Dustin may not have the super viral boxing moments like Max Holloway has, and Dustin probably doesn't have the tight, clean, more traditional boxing of Poirier, but he is damn sure creative and effective, and that's shown through his resume. Dustin doesn't just have one of the best resumes in the division and of all time, but he has built such an impressive resume against the sport's absolute best boxers and strikers of all time. In their second fight, Dustin legitimately outboxed one of the best strikers and boxers in the division at the time in Conor McGregor, and this was when Conor was at his absolute best boxing-wise, having trained pure boxing for his fight with Floyd Mayweather. He technically beat down Max Holloway in their second fight, who many consider to have the best boxing in the UFC. He also beat down Eddie Alvarez in their rematch, who is a guy that doesn't get enough credit for how great his boxing is. And you add in the wars and great displays of boxing against tough strikers in a prime Dan Hooker and Justin Gaethje in their first fight, Dustin has shown to have probably one of the best resumes ever built from outboxing and outstriking some of the best boxers and strikers in the UFC. I love Max Holloway, but he's literally been outboxed by Dustin and Volk before, and as great as Poirier's technique is, and he's shown to have very dominant boxing, he has too small of a sample size in the UFC. That doesn't nearly compare to the resume of Dustin, and that's why I think Dustin Poirier is the best boxer in the UFC, and damn it, I'm going to put money on Dustin Poirier to win via KO against Islam Makhachev this Saturday, and you can too using DraftKings. Anyways, what do you guys think about Dustin Poirier? Is he the best boxer in the UFC? What's going to happen this Saturday with him against Islam Makhachev? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really cheering for a Dustin Poirier win, and as always, thanks for watching.